All right, let's dive in. Today, we're going to unpack something really complex but also incredibly important: the massive, growing web of companies that are all in the fight against ALS. It's a world that runs on cutting-edge science, a ton of investment, and, as we'll see, some really intense collaboration.
So you have to ask the big question, right? What does it actually take to make a new drug for a disease like ALS? This one question, well, it drives billions of dollars in research. It's the life's work for literally thousands of scientists. And the answer? It isn't one company or some lone genius having a breakthrough. Nope. It's a dynamic, super interconnected ecosystem. So let's map it out.
Okay, before we get into who's who, we first have to get a handle on the unique and, frankly, brutal landscape they're all operating in. I mean, trying to develop a drug for ALS is one of the absolute toughest challenges in all of modern medicine. Think about it. The disease can move with just devastating speed, which makes clinical trials unbelievably hard to design. And because, thankfully, it's a relatively rare disease, the small patient population creates huge economic hurdles. Then you have the science itself, which is just mind-bogglingly complex. So, you see, tackling all of this, it's not a job for one company. It takes a whole system of them, with everyone playing a very different but very crucial role. So, let's start at the top of this ecosystem. Think of it like a giant rainforest. At the top, you have the canopy. These are the huge, publicly traded pharmaceutical companies. We're talking about the household names, the ones with the power and the deep pockets to operate on a truly global scale. Companies like these, they bring some serious firepower to the fight. They've got the capital for sure, but they also have the global infrastructure to run massive clinical trials and the regulatory know-how to get a promising therapy from a lab bench all the way to patients, wherever they are in the world. Let's take Biogen as an example. This is a biotech giant that has been a major player in ALS research for a long time. They've really zeroed in on the genetic forms of the disease, and they pioneered one of the very first antisense therapies that actually targets the root cause of one specific type of ALS linked to the SOD1 gene. It's truly groundbreaking stuff. And this really shows you the different but totally complementary roles in this ecosystem. On one hand, you have Big Pharma, the giants. They bring the scale, right? Global trials, massive manufacturing power, and that deep, deep regulatory expertise. But on the other side, you've got these more agile biotech firms, and they're often the ones birthing the truly pioneering science and the super specialized technologies. So, moving down from that canopy of the giants, we get into the really dynamic undergrowth of the ecosystem. This is where you find the biotech firms, both public and private, that are just pushing the absolute boundaries of what's scientifically possible. A perfect example here is Ionis Pharmaceuticals. These guys are widely seen as the pioneers of that antisense technology I mentioned. It's a platform that has been a complete game changer for a bunch of rare genetic diseases, and ALS is definitely one of them. So what is this stuff anyway? Well, the easiest way to think about antisense therapy is like a molecular spell checker for your genes. It lets scientists design a tiny molecule that can go in, find one specific harmful gene, and just silence it. It stops a toxic protein from ever being made right at the source. It's pretty amazing. And the list of innovators just goes on. You have Amylyx, which is all about combination therapies to protect our neurons from stress. Then there's Denali, which is tackling neuroinflammation and that huge challenge of actually getting drugs past the blood-brain barrier. And you've got Wave developing these precision therapies for other generic targets like C9 or 72. See, each one is a totally different shot on goal.
And the innovation gets even more futuristic when you look at the private companies. You've got companies like Verge Genomics that are using artificial intelligence, literally using AI to comb through massive biological datasets to find brand new drug targets that human scientists might have completely missed. It's a totally data-driven way of doing drug discovery.
Okay, so we have the giants and we have the innovators. But what powers all this work? What's the fuel that keeps this entire ecosystem running? Well, it's a complex but vital network of funding and partnerships. This pretty much maps out the journey of a new therapy. It's a long road. It often starts with a fundamental discovery in a university lab. Then, venture capital might fund a small biotech startup to really develop that idea. And later, that startup might partner up with a big pharma company to get the funding and resources to run those enormous, expensive global clinical trials. You can see how each step absolutely relies on the next. And this quote just hits the nail on the head. The lines between a university lab, a small biotech, and a huge pharma company, they're constantly blurring. These partnerships aren't just common anymore. They are the defining feature of how we actually make progress in ALS research today.
So, let's put it all together. What does the future of this fight actually look like? What are the big trends that are shaping where all this research and development is headed?
The single biggest trend, the real game changer shaping the future, is this massive shift toward precision medicine. The whole field is moving away from that old one-size-fits-all approach. The goal isn't to find one treatment for ALS anymore. It's about finding the right treatment for a specific type of ALS.
And this shift comes from a growing understanding that ALS probably isn't just one disease. It's more like a group of related conditions. So now researchers are developing therapies that go after really specific biological pathways, like mutations in the SOD1 or C9orf72 genes, or problems with critical proteins like TDP43.
And that brings us right back to the core message of this whole explainer. The hope for finding effective treatments, it isn't resting on the shoulders of one hero company. Not at all. It's being carried forward by this entire interconnected and constantly growing network of collaboration and investment.
You know, the competition and the collaboration happening within this ecosystem, it's just accelerating the pace of discovery like never before. So the big question that's left is, which of these amazing scientific shots on goal is going to be the one to finally score? From gene silencing to AI-driven discovery, the more shots we take, the better the odds. And that's something to be really hopeful about.